Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with lessons and powerful endings, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. This one might just make you cry, but in the best way. It's a story about failure, rejection, and a comeback so dramatic, no one could see it coming. Daniel Cooper was never a bad student, just different. He didn't learn by memorizing formulas or sitting still in class. While his teachers wrote him off as lazy, he was always drawing in the margins of his notebook or disassembling broken electronics to see how they worked. But when he failed his final high school exams 2 years in a row, his father snapped. Leonard Cooper was a retired Army sergeant. Discipline and results were all that mattered to him. The day Daniel came home with his second failing report card, there was no yelling, no lecture. Instead, there was silence. That night, Daniel found his suitcase packed, sitting by the door. "You've shamed this family enough," Leonard said without making eye contact. "You want to be a failure? Fine. Go be one somewhere else, but not under my roof." Daniel's mother, Linda, stood by, trembling. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she didn't say a word. That silence hurt more than the rejection itself. With trembling hands, Daniel picked up his bag, walked out the front door, and into the unknown. No goodbyes, no second chances. The sun had set by the time he reached the bus stop. He had less than $40 in his pocket and nowhere to sleep. He was only 17. That night, Daniel slept on a bench at the Greyhound station. He watched people come and go, wondering if they, too, had been discarded by someone they loved. He had no friends to call, no job, no future, at least not the kind society respects. But something happened as he lay there, staring at the flickering street lamp above him. A thought: "I'll never let anyone make me feel like this again." The next morning, Daniel woke up with a stiff neck, an empty stomach, and the sound of buses roaring in his ears. He walked for hours through the city, asking for odd jobs, anything to earn some cash. Rejection after rejection chipped away at his confidence, but he kept moving. By late afternoon, a manager at a 24-hour car wash finally said, "You can start tonight. Minimum wage, night shift." And that's how it began. While other teens were sleeping comfortably in their beds, Daniel spent his nights scrubbing tires, vacuuming car interiors, and battling sleep under fluorescent lights. He saved every cent. He didn't spend $1 unless he absolutely had to. He wore the same shoes until the soles gave out. He slept in shelters, under stairwells, and once in a broken-down truck behind the car wash. But Daniel also started visiting the public library. It was quiet, warm, and full of books. He devoured everything: business, computers, engineering, biographies of people who rose from nothing. The stories lit a fire in him. He began sketching inventions, designing software on public computers, watching free coding tutorials on YouTube with borrowed headphones. At night, while rinsing soap off shiny SUVs, he imagined himself speaking at conferences, launching products, being someone his father would never expect. One day, a man came through the car wash in a Tesla. The man was talking loudly on the phone about a new startup and needed help connecting device to the car's interface. Daniel stepped in and solved the problem in 30 seconds. The man raised an eyebrow. "You in tech?" Daniel shook his head. "Just curious. Ever thought about working in it?" the man asked. Daniel paused. "Every day." The man handed him a business card. "Call me." That night, Daniel held that card in his hands like it was a golden ticket. And maybe it was. Have you or someone you know ever had to rebuild from the ground up? Let us know in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who needs it. Daniel didn't call the man right away. For 3 days, he stared at the business card tucked inside his wallet. Doubt crept in. Why would a tech entrepreneur care about a high school dropout who smelled like car polish and had no formal education? But on the fourth day, standing in the library parking lot with his shoes soaked from the rain, he picked up a prepaid phone and dialed the number. Marcus Laird speaking, the voice answered. Hi, this is Daniel. From the car wash. You gave me your card. There was a pause. Then, I was wondering if you'd call. Got time to meet? The next day, Daniel walked into a minimalist office filled with people his age, wearing hoodies and typing frantically. Marcus was different from anyone Daniel had ever met. Sharp, laid back, and deeply intuitive. They talked for hours, not about degrees or test scores, but about ideas. Daniel spoke about a mobile app he had started sketching that would help street vendors manage their inventory and customers. Marcus was impressed. How'd you come up with that? I used to watch them while I walked to the library. I noticed patterns. You know what you are? Marcus asked. You're a systems thinker. That's rare. Marcus offered him a paid internship on the spot. No paperwork, no tests, just belief. Daniel accepted it with a mix of joy and fear. He knew this was his one shot and he wasn't going to waste it. For the first time in years, he had a real bed, a clean desk, and a laptop of his own. He studied harder than ever, teaching himself coding languages like Python and JavaScript. Within 6 months, he was contributing to product development. Within a year, he was leading a small team. And by the third year, he co-founded a startup with Marcus, a platform that merged AI tools with local small businesses. It took off like wildfire. At just 24 years old, Daniel was negotiating deals with investors, flying cross-country, and being interviewed on podcasts as a self-taught genius. But still, there was one thing unresolved. The father who had thrown him away like trash. And fate was about to bring them face to face again, in a way neither of them could have imagined. The invitation came unexpectedly. Daniel was scheduled to speak at a leadership conference in his hometown, the same city he had once left, with nothing but a backpack and a bruised heart. As he looked at the event location on the flyer, his breath caught. The venue, the hotel across the street from his old high school. It had been nearly 8 years since he'd set foot anywhere near that neighborhood. His fingers trembled slightly as he confirmed his attendance. The night before the event, he walked past his childhood home. It looked the same. White fence, slightly overgrown garden, the same swing hanging from the tree in the front yard. Lights were on. For a brief moment, he saw shadows moving through the window. Was his father still there? His mother? He turned away and headed back to his hotel. He wasn't ready yet. The next morning, the auditorium was packed. Hundreds of students, educators, and local business owners had gathered. When Daniel stepped on stage in a tailored navy blue suit, no one could connect this polished, confident man to the failure who once roamed the streets with holes in his shoes. His speech was raw. He told them everything being kicked out. The park bench, the car wash, the doubts, the discovery. But more than that, he spoke about potential, about how the world measures intelligence in narrow ways, and how some of the greatest minds don't fit the mold. People cried. They cheered. They stood up and applauded. As he stepped off stage, a woman rushed to him with tears in her eyes. It was Ms. Raymond, his former math teacher, the only one who had ever believed in him. I knew you were special, she whispered, hugging him tight. But what happened next stopped him cold. A man in the back row stood up, walking slowly toward the stage. He was older now, thinner, with grayer hair and a heavy look in his eyes. It was Leonard, his father. He didn't say a word at first. He just stood there, looking up at his son, disbelief all over his face. Daniel froze. Would you forgive someone who abandoned you in your darkest hour? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next is something no one saw coming.
By the next morning, the photo had gone viral. It was on every gossip blog, every business news segment, and plastered across social media with captions like, "Heiress breaks tradition, caught with her office boy at gala." Victoria Langston's mystery man, romance or rebellion? Inside the Langston and Cumber building, whispers slithered through every corridor. Employees stared, some snickered, others offered silent nods of support. But the atmosphere had changed. When Elijah arrived, security stopped him at the lobby. For the first time in weeks, Elijah and Victoria felt free. No chauffeurs, no boardrooms, no photographers. They rented a small cabin 2 hours outside the city, nestled among pine trees and silence. It wasn't luxury, but it was peace. Victoria traded her designer heels for sneakers. Elijah helped her cook breakfast over a small stove. They read, laughed, even danced to music from a dusty radio. For once, their love didn't feel like a scandal. It felt like home. But freedom came with its own shadows. One evening, while chopping vegetables, Elijah's phone buzzed. He ignored it. Then it rang again and again. Victoria frowned. "Is everything okay?" Elijah picked up the phone and stepped outside. When he returned, his face was pale. "What is it?" she asked, heart tightening. He sat down slowly. "That was Detective Reyes from Tampa." Victoria's eyebrows raised. "Tampa? My hometown." He hesitated. "Apparently, someone I used to know is under investigation. A guy I used to work for at a moving company. Turns out he was stealing from clients, and they think I helped him." Victoria blinked. "Did you?" "Of course not. I quit the moment I realized what was happening. But they're reopening the case. They might subpoena me as a suspect." She sat beside him, her hand finding his. "And do you think they'll arrest you?" He looked away. "I don't know." The silence grew sharp. "I didn't tell you," Elijah said quietly, "because I didn't want to lose you, or prove your father right." Victoria stood, pacing the small room. "So all this time you were hiding it?" "I wasn't hiding. I didn't think it would follow me." She paused. "Do you or someone you know have a story like this, where the past shows up just when the future starts to look bright?" She turned back to him. "I stood up to my family for you. I gave up my name, my legacy, and I never asked you to," he replied softly. That hurt, but it was honest. She sat down again, tears welling in her eyes. "So what do we do?" "We go back," he said. "I face it, clear my name. And if you can't, then I face that too." Victoria took a deep breath. "Then I'm coming with you." "No," Elijah said firmly, "not this time." But she grabbed his hand tighter, "Especially this time." Because if they had learned anything, it was this. Real love doesn't vanish when trouble shows up. It stands, even when everything else starts to fall. "I work here," he said, confused. One of the guards looked uncomfortable. "We've been told to place you on temporary leave until further notice." Elijah blinked. "By whom?" But they didn't answer. He stood there for a moment, humiliated, surrounded by stares and murmurs, before turning and walking back outside. Meanwhile, on the top floor, Victoria was in a heated meeting with the board. Her father, Winston Langston, joined by Jonathan Hargrove, sat stone-faced. "You've embarrassed this company," Winston snapped. "I went to a gala with someone I respect," she replied calmly. "You went with a janitor," Jonathan said. "Do you understand how that looks to investors?" Victoria's jaw clenched. "He's not a janitor. He's a decent, brilliant young man with more heart than anyone in this room." Winston banged his fist. "You either end this nonsense today, or you forfeit your role in this company, and I will make sure Elijah never works in this city again." A silence followed, thick and heavy. Victoria stood slowly. "Then I resign." Gasps rippled across the table. Winston leaned forward. "You'd give it all up, for him." She looked straight at her father. "No, I'm giving it up for me." Later that evening, Victoria found Elijah sitting on a park bench, hunched over, phone buzzing non-stop in his pocket. "I got fired," he said quietly as she approached. She sat beside him. "So did I." He turned to her, shocked. "You quit?" She nodded. "I couldn't let them decide who I'm allowed to love." Elijah stared at her, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll come with me." "Where?" "I don't know. Anywhere." And just like that, the two who had once belonged to different worlds had no world left except each other. But the story was far from over, because while they thought they had escaped the chains of society, a secret from Elijah's past was about to surface, and it could ruin everything they had just risked it all for. They returned to Tampa under a heavy sky, the kind that seemed to mirror the weight Elijah carried on his shoulders. Victoria stayed by his side, even though every step back into his past made her question what they were walking toward. Detective Reyes met them at the station, polite but firm. "We're not charging him yet," he explained, "but he's named in the original complaint, and the lead suspect, Marcus Reed, claims Elijah was involved." "That's a lie," Elijah said calmly. "I hope so," Reyes replied, "because if we can't prove your innocence, the case could go to trial." After hours of statements, paperwork, and interviews, Elijah was released, but instructed not to leave the city. Outside the precinct, Victoria turned to him. "We need help, a lawyer." "I can't afford one," he said, frustration boiling under his skin. She didn't even blink. "But I can." That night, they stayed in a modest motel near the city limits. Victoria paced the room, making calls, using her remaining influence to hire one of Florida's top defense attorneys. Elijah sat on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "I should have known this would happen," he muttered. Victoria knelt in front of him. "You didn't do anything wrong. This isn't your fault. I brought you into this mess. You gave me something my world never had. Truth. Now I'm giving you what my world always had. Resources." She kissed his forehead, and for the first time since the call, Elijah exhaled. The next day, their lawyer, Dana Rowe, reviewed the evidence. "It's thin," she said, "but Marcus Reed is smart. He left no trail that clearly clears you either." "So what now?" Elijah asked. "We find someone who'll talk, a witness, someone who knows what really happened." Days passed with no leads. Tension built, and then, out of nowhere, a miracle appeared. A janitor who used to work for the moving company reached out anonymously. He claimed to have seen Marcus hiding valuables, and Elijah warning him to stop, but he was scared, afraid to come forward. Victoria made him an offer, protection, payment, whatever it took, and finally, the man agreed. The pieces were falling into place, but they weren't out of danger yet, because Marcus Reed had just found out Elijah was back in town, and he wasn't planning to let him walk away clean. Marcus Reed wasn't the kind of man who walked away quietly. When he learned Elijah was back in Tampa and that someone was willing to testify against him, he didn't go to the police. He went looking for leverage. That evening, as Elijah and Victoria returned from another meeting with the attorney, they noticed something off. The motel door was cracked open. Elijah instinctively pushed Victoria behind him before stepping inside. The room had been ransacked. Drawers pulled out, pillows slashed, even the bathroom mirror broken. Elijah clenched his fists. "He's trying to scare us." Victoria's eyes scanned the room. "Is anything missing?" Elijah opened the drawer near the bed and sighed. "My journal." He took it. It wasn't valuable to anyone else, but to Elijah, it was his soul on paper. Drawings, personal thoughts, memories, things that, in the wrong hands, could be twisted. They called Detective Reyes immediately. "I'll assign an officer to watch the motel," he said. "But if Marcus makes a move, we need evidence. Otherwise, there's nothing I can do." Victoria turned to Elijah. We need to end this. Fast. The next morning, their lawyer arranged a formal deposition with the janitor, whose name was Carlos. He was nervous but determined. "I saw Marcus taking stuff out of boxes," Carlos said under oath. "Expensive things, watches, jewelry, you name it." Elijah told him to stop. They argued. Next day, Elijah quit. "That's all I know." It was enough. The attorney filed a motion to clear Elijah from the case. The judge set a hearing date for the following week. But Marcus wasn't done. 2 nights before the hearing, Elijah received a text from an unknown number. "Drop the case, or I drop you. You have no idea who you're messing with." Victoria grabbed the phone. "We go to the police." "No," Elijah said, thinking. "We give him exactly what he wants." She stared. "What does that mean?" He looked at her with calm determination. "Let's bait him." Victoria hesitated. "That's dangerous." "So is losing everything," Elijah replied. And so they set the trap. They leaked word through a mutual acquaintance that Elijah would be alone at a downtown cafe the night before the hearing. And sure enough, Marcus took the bait. What he didn't know was that Victoria had already set up hidden cameras with the help of her lawyer, and off-duty officers were parked discreetly nearby. When Marcus sat across from Elijah and muttered threats into his coffee, he unknowingly confessed to the theft and more. Minutes later, he was surrounded by flashing lights and officers. He didn't go quietly, but he went. And Elijah, he finally exhaled. But even after clearing his name, a new storm was quietly forming, one neither he nor Victoria could see coming.